I was getting ill, and I was getting ill in the same way I was when I was at the near-death experience stage. But I was realising what it was because I'd been there before.
Yeah.
And bloody Toxaprevent. You don't need a PPI,
Thanks, Anna.
Just need to,
Detox.
I'd even put an extra one in if I eat something and I think, oh, I shouldn't have eaten right now and it's a bit acidic.
Yeah.
I just go, just stick a Toxaprevent in.
You'd be fine, yeah.
I won't be without it now. I really wouldn't. I will never come off it, I'll tell you that.
Because as a company, that sounds amazing, right? Because you're just like, oh, as like a company, great, you get repeat customers and stuff. But obviously for me, I'm like, oh, I just want people to stop taking it. And I tell people that. And it's not like I have to, but I do tell people that because obviously they don't want to be on substance the rest of their life. But the problem is, if you look at why zeolite was created from volcanic ash, the volcanoes create it, it puts that into the atmosphere, and that acts as a natural binder. Yeah. Just how the body heals itself, the earth heals itself.
Absolutely.
And so when you're taking it daily, you're actually benefiting the system in quite a retrospective way. And I think a lot of people just don't really think about that link between the two things, because you can stop taking it, fine, great. But it's like even histamine.
2 years down the line, Dilly, it took less than 2 years for me to get sick again.
Yeah. Well, you expose toxins no matter what.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Expose toxins no matter
now
what.
I'm like, no, this is a life change. This is a cheap life change, because if I wasn't taking that, I'd be taking £300 worth of supplements every month, Yeah. I don't take any supplements.
Simplicity sometimes is the easy.
Yeah, take that and phosphatidylcholine and that's it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Right, I think that's a really good place to start. Thank you, everyone. If you've been listening into our conversation, me and Anne have just been chatting away. You actually missed a bit more of the conversation before. I think we're going to get into some really juicy content today. So, like, I'm going to introduce Anne. I don't even know where to start with Anne. I've known Anne since 2016, maybe 2017, and I've got a bit of a funny story of how I met Anne, right? So we had just started Nuva Healthcare. We were the new kids on the block. No one really knew who we were. And a practitioner at an event called the ICANN came up to me and she was just like, oh, so you're Toxaprevent? And I was like, yeah. And she was just like, oh, there's this practitioner who was on stage speaking about it. Her name's Anne. And I was like, oh, really? She goes, yeah. She was saying about how incredible Toxaprevent really was. And I just thought, okay. Didn't know nothing of it. And she was like, and a couple of the practitioners came up. They're like, oh, so this is it. Tell us a bit more. So we told them a bit more. And then I thought, I need to meet the speaker who's told me this. So I like sidled into this room. Anna was sat at this stage, right? And she was sat with all the practitioners around us. And I went over, stood in line, introduced myself, and it was just instant. Like literally, it was just like, hi, I'm Dilly from Nuva Healthcare. And Anna was like, yeah, who? And then I went, Toxaprevent. And she was like, oh my God, it's you. And then literally, I remember, me and Anne walked out, we went to our table, we sat there, explained the products to her, and then you just became a massive like advocate for us. And it was in about 2018, we did an online talk together on mold and mycotoxins. We then did a public one in Manchester, and the feedback was like incredible because not many people were talking about mold and mycotoxins. Now in 2024, if you look at it, a lot of people are talking about mold and mycotoxins. And I would argue that that's because you've pioneered a lot of it in the UK market. That's my opinion. I think you have, personally, because I think you're incredible, as you well know. And so I was sat this morning and I was just finishing off like how to introduce you. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to make a mistake here. But for anyone who actually doesn't know Anne Pemberton, what I want you to do is just hit pause this video, go onto Google and just type in her name and just read the sites with information about her. It's incredible. So to give you a bit of background on Anne, she's an ex-nurse who has worked in the ITU, correct? She was a graduate of psychology. She's a nutritional therapist practitioner, course director, and a practitioner of energy medicine, all rolled in to a medically intuitive empath. And she actually taught me the word empath. I didn't know what empath was. You taught me that word, so I want to say thank you for that. And the way I want to start this is just from a quote from Anne's Adventurous Heart website, which is empowering you to heal you. That resonated with me so much. And before we even started this recording, I said to Anne, when I read that, it made me smile, because that's one of the most important things that we as a company do, but a lot of practitioners are focusing on. Everything they do is about empowering the individual to heal themselves. And so thank you, Anne, so much for traveling all the way down. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to this chat, because I think we've got a lot to talk about today, a lot of research to go through, a lot of stories and snippets of information. So this is going to be exciting. Thank you, Dilly. That's a lovely introduction. Bless you. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate it a lot. Like I said, we've known each other for a while. So let's start with like a bit of your background and talk about like your journey through mold and mycotoxins. That story is really, really important to the next stage of the story. Yeah. Okay then. So yeah, my journey with mold and mycotoxins was I had a near-death experience in 2017, my fourth. So some people keep having to go back and learn the lessons. And it turned out to be a really bad mould, which was causing massive histamine reactions. It was having really negative effects on my central nervous system. So I was a bit off the planet brain-wise. And it was breaking down my cell membranes, and basically was given 5 days to live. Wow. And I put a call out to Dr. Damien Downing, because I'd worked with Dr. Downing for about 7 years previously. And he contacted Dr. Patricia Kane, and they put a protocol together overnight, and they both said to me, hold on there 24 hours because we'll have a courier there in the morning. Wow. They sent me IV equipment and IV intravenous phosphatidylcholine. And after about 4 days, I was able to get off the bed. And then from then, I started to realise that everything I had in my arsenal, from, being obsessed with the human since age 13. My school teacher gave me the syllabus for human biology, and I went, I've got to do that. And that was it. The obsession started. So I had all those tools in my arsenal, and I still couldn't get well. So I started to look at Dr. Klinghart's 5 levels of healing, which is physical, energetic, mental, intuitive and spiritual. And I thought, if I don't hit all 5, I'm never going to get well. And part of that journey was my body was so toxic. I could not heal the cell membranes, and I couldn't get the histamine down, and I couldn't get my digestion working, and I couldn't get my brain to work things out without binding it up. And Toxaprevent, I don't know how it came to me, but what I saw when I looked at the research, I looked at the fact that it was cleaned thoroughly, whereas, with a lot of binders, depending on the quality, you don't know what's in them. So that got me. And the other thing, I looked at it and I said, oh, they make crystals out of this as well, because it's technically a crystal, isn't it? And so, Mother Nature's creating this. This is where we need to go. Yeah. There's only one way to heal, and that's through Mother Nature. So that's why I came into it. And I was taking it non-stop, I would say, for about 4.5 years. Felt incredible on it. Really came back, did a lot of other stuff as well, but really came back. And then I stopped it when I moved house, primarily because my cost for everything was going up. And I decided, you know what, I'm well enough, I'm not taking any more supplements. You know what us practitioners are like, we carry carrier bags of supplements around, And I just went, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And then over the next 2 years, I started to dwindle off again in my health. And I just went, do you know what? I've got to go back to the basics again and sort it. And by this time, I'd learned other things, which we'll come on to. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's almost like my best friend now, as you know. I think, like you said about it, like it's the natural side of it. Absolutely. If you look at like what we do in terms of looking at supplements, we'll look at like the fillers, excipients, things like that. And the biggest argument is, how natural is it? And when you get something that's actually comes from volcanoes, comes from the actual physical ground that we mine and we bring out of the system, and it's a natural binder for the environment. Like it's literally binds up nutrients and minerals and toxins in the environment and holds onto them. But it's also been used in agriculture. So if you look at zeolites, the history of zeolites, it was used in, it's actually not just used, it's still used in agriculture for farming to help with the growth of plants, but also to remove the mycotoxins from animals. And so when you kind of get into that, you think, well, if it's going to the animals and it's going to the atmosphere, if I put it into myself, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to get better, right? And that's the game changer. And I think that's such an important thing you just said there. When you look at that focus and you bring it onto that, detoxification is at the basics of everything that we do. So thank you for introducing yourself. But I want to get into this that sat next to me. That's literally like I can feel the energy just coming off it. That I want to kind of look at it. And because you use the word trauma, and you mentioned the word trauma, it's something that we've talked about in our past conversations over the years. And so I want to kind of get into this new piece of research, because I think we hadn't chatted to each other for about, I'd say, a year and a half, 18 months, maybe 2 years. Yeah. And then I reached out to you. I think we just kind of like got into contact, and you were just like, Dilly, I've got something new that I want to share with you. And I was like, Anne, Dilly wants to hear what's going on. So I was like, literally, give me a call. And then, yeah, this fell into place. And I thought, right, let's talk about this. So I want to talk about this diagram, because I think we need to get into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I'll let you start.
So, yeah, 2 years ago, I got into trauma in a really big way. I met a really amazing guy called David Router, who is a visionary who sees our energy.
Okay.
I'd been doing a lot of research on particular traumas. We've all got traumas, every one of us. We've got the studies from Holocaust and things like that, where we know about transgenerational trauma or intergenerational trauma. Some of us, my age group particularly, we're not quite post-war babies. 10 years older than me, they're post-war babies.
Yeah.
Right? So they've got parents who've fought in the wars, whose mothers have been in the ammunitions factory, creating the ammunitions for the men to fight, never knowing if their husbands are coming home.
Yeah.
So much stress. And the husbands have been watching their friends being killed and bombs going off at the side of them. And, we have no concept of what kind of trauma that is. And it's all been shut down. And so that generation are people who you have something that you want to get off your chest or you're upset about, and it's, we had bombs going off, forget about that. That's not, and when I'm not blaming anyone, because this is how society is, isn't it? And it's almost like Earth School in inverted commas. So I started to look at that, and I was doing some work on myself, and I was having flashbacks into my birth, basically.
Right.
And I told David about it, and he asked me about my birth. So I gave him that information, and he explained to me what had happened, because I was a really severe birth trauma.
Yeah.
And what he explained to me was spirit, consciousness, soul. It gets fragmented when you're on the brink of life and death and you're coming into the planet. And the shamans understand this.
Do you
very much
explain
so.
the birth trauma a little bit more, so people understand a bit more about the birth trauma?
Yeah, I mean, it's Hella's work, actually. What happens when you're coming into the earth and you're basically losing your life as you're coming in, your consciousness, your spirit, your soul, they all get fragmented. And so you come in, and Hella calls it not being embodied. So you feel like an alien on your own planet, basically. Yeah. Oddball. And you usually are the oddball in the group as well. So, at school you get picked on quite a lot. You tend to be a bit, green as grass, not really socially equipped. And Hella talks about this a lot in his Healing Developmental Trauma book. So once David had explained to me about the disembodiment, I then looked into Hella's work quite a lot. David started to heal that for me. But what had happened as a result of that was my central nervous system was just on fire. I had a vagus nerve stimulator as it happened, and I'd been using that for about 2.5 years.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But I can't say I was getting a lot better in any way, shape or form. And then over time, with the work with David, things started to come up, and I started to realise that actually I was getting ill, and I was getting ill in the same way I was when I was at the near-death experience stage.
Oh, wow.
But I was realising what it was because I'd been there before.
Yeah.
So I didn't have mould that I had before, but I did have the cell membrane breakdown, and I did have a situation that has been on and off since childhood when I look at it. Being clumsy, knocking things over, falling, everything. I mean, I'm diagnosed with chronic fatigue, but the chronic fatigue, for me, is a structural thing because my muscles never worked because my nervous system wasn't speaking to my muscles. I never really understood why until I listened to a chappie called Gil Headley, who he's another out-of-the-box guy.
Yeah.
And you can watch him on YouTube. He's talking about fascia. And what he was teaching us was that things like, that's part of the energetic body, if you like, carries the blood supply, the lymph, all of that. And so any toxins that we have in the body, he's saying they tend to get stuck in the fascia. And when that happens, we lose the connection between the central nervous system and the muscles. The receptors don't work, basically. They get switched off, a bit like your genes.
Yeah.
And so that was happening. And I'd seen various stages in my life, like when I was in my 20s, and I was in my nurse training, I was in the gym, I was on the dance floor. I had full, they call it proprioception, or Hannah calls it sensory motor amnesia when that happens. So there's a couple of names for it. Well, I noticed in my 20s, you can look back and you can say, well, you were really happy then and you're with all your friends and all that, and life was good, and you didn't have all the trappings of, what we have as Western society. But I can also say I was physically active. My brain was working because I was in nursing. I was doing what I was meant to do, which was care for people. And all of that made me whole and didn't have the same problems with my physical health as I did later on in life. So I've kind of looked at all of that, and what I've learned is that once your central nervous system stops speaking to your muscles, then the body can't work. And part of that, and also as part of aging, and because of our lifestyles, we have a propensity to do this and contract all the front of the body. We do that when we're traumatised because trauma comes in at solar plexus. We do it when we're trying to save ourselves if we're in a vicinity where there are people who are a bit control freaky. That kind of stuff. And we do it as we age as well, because we spend more time sitting. And also, as we know, we're all behind computers or car wheels now because very few of us really walk anywhere. So it makes sense of why people age as well, and why they age badly, if that's the right word. So I just got really into all of this, and then I started to do some clinical somatics, which is the way out of this, all of it. Working with David with the energetics, functional consciousness, and doing the clinical somatics. And I got really toxic really quickly, within days.
Oh, really?
I could tell the clinical somatics was working because I was feeling the benefit in terms of the muscles were starting to work again. But I was feeling so ill, kind of in this area. The gut was just cutting out again. And I just thought, Gil's right. This is toxicity. So obviously put my Toxaprevent back in, put my phosphatidylcholine back in to start healing my cell membranes, and here I am again to tell the tale. So what I've done since all of this is there were a few people who I was just tentatively explaining, because we were in a group together, and 4 of them came on board and said, I want to do that.
Amazing.
And they're having the same experience, because I think that's when we spoke last time.
Yeah.
I was looking at doing a pilot study, and then I thought, no, I probably need to get more information first. I need to kind of put the model together. So it is a bit busy at the minute. It does need downscaling quite a lot. But I mean, from what I'm seeing happen is, once the central nervous system is unable to talk to the muscles, the digestive system will shut down, because we will contract as well as part of all of that.
Yeah.
Digestive system will shut down. It'll get inflamed because the foods that are going in can't be digested, so they're naturally causing inflammation to tell us to do something about it. Leaky gut.
Yeah.
Then we get all this. Then the bugs overgrow, because we know we live in a synergistic environment, or we should do.
Yeah.
We are synergistic with the earth and all its inhabitants. We are more bug than man. However, we live in an age where, since we've had antibiotics, it's always been about kill the bug, the bug's killing you.
Have you heard about the toothpaste stuff? Like I was watching, like you come up on the TV, it was like forget about germs in mouth, use this toothpaste, it's going to destroy the bacteria. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, we've already said, like, people, like, literal medical doctors are coming out and dentists are saying, do not use mouthwash, because when you sterilize the entire mouth, you're not just killing the negative bacteria, you're causing killing the positive bacteria. And they said that more people who use certain mouthwashes are more likely to get things like caries, periodontitis, plaque formation.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that kind of angle of it, that kind of freaked me out, because I was like, now they're getting to toothpaste. And even because when we brought our toothpaste, it was all about binding to the histamine, reducing the inflammation, taking away the mycotoxins from the caries and plaque formation, and allowing the body to heal itself with the good bacteria. Absolutely. And that's scary when we kind of get into that, like, destroy everything and kind of start all over again, because if you destroy everything, you don't know the impact of what you're having of taking away the good bacteria.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, we could be killing people at the end of the day, couldn't we?
We don't know, because
we have no idea.
Yeah, because it's longitudinal. It's not about getting that response right now. Yeah. Because we immediately get like a benefit, but then we don't know the long-term health effects. Like even with vaping, for example. And it sounds ridiculous to bring this up in the conversation, but one of the things the reason why they're banning vaping now is because there's no longitudinal data on it. When we discovered smoking was bad, it was because they started getting the longitudinal data, and humans were basically guinea pigs. We were just basically like, oh, we found this, so let's just try it out, see what happens. Oh, no one's going to die. No one's going to die. Let's put some fantastic marketing on it, and it will work. But then if you actually look at when they started bringing the studies out, going, oh, actually smoking causes this, and it causes this, and it causes this, and that's the issue. And that I think is tough. But when you come to bring it back to this, when you look at this, every single section of it is individualized, where people have individually done the studies together. Yeah. But what you've essentially done is linked it all up, the research together, and you've got longitudinal evidence.
Mm. Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, you've got longitudinal evidence.
Because from their studies, absolutely.
You've got all the mixture of the studies together.
I mean, I still think that there is. I mean, I come from both sides, obviously. You know, I still think there is cases where we do need those medications, where we do need,
100%,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're not sitting here saying our way is right, and we're not.
Of course
not. We have to say that, don't we?
100%.
But I think, you know, when you go back to the nature thing, and even for our patients, if they have got a big overgrowth of something that is causing them massive problems, like mould, like Clostridia, you know, whatever, parasites, whatever, then you do have to get those down. But my argument is we do a lot of that without knowing the status of the toxicity of the body and the state of the cell membranes. And when we start to cause more toxicity by killing things off, because everything creates toxicity, doesn't it? You can't kill things off and have them, you know, break down in your body and it's not toxic.
Yeah.
And then people seem surprised by that, like they almost expect to feel instantly better. But actually, if it's creating toxicity, it makes sense to me, get the toxicity out of the way, heal the cell membranes as much as you can, and then you're not going to get the big reactions that you're getting from your artemisinin or wherever else you find, you know, or your antibiotics, whatever else. And I think that's where most of the interactions come from, because the body's just not in a stable place.
Well, like you talked about the protection of, like, when you protect your system, and like talking about that section, if you look at like behavioral psychologists, and when I remember this TV series called Lie to Me. It was on, like, it's a big American TV program, and I think they cancelled after so many seasons because apparently the American viewer had got what they wanted from it and they were done with it. But the chap in that was using things like, when for men, for example, when they're in a process where they feel attacked, they would put their hands in front of their package and stuff, and you know, they'd put their hands in front of their penises, like, oh, I'm hiding it. And then for some people, what they would do is, when they were like upset or angry, didn't agree with someone, they would kind of fold their arms to protect themselves from that person. And the thing is, we do it. And if we were saying, I think it was before the cameras were on, we were talking about, like I was saying, you sit down in a chair, and as you're working, and as you kind of like, you're reading emails, you're kind of processing that information. And I've noticed I slowly start to go like a hunch, because I'm reading so much information, and like sometimes it's like, oh, a bit of stress, oh, Dilly, you need to do this, or this is coming up, oh, can you get this done? And I'm slowly, as it's weighing me down, I slowly start to protect my core. Yeah. And then because you're protecting your core, you're pulling the muscles on your back. Yeah. And then as you pull the muscles on your back,
and then you get neck pain, shoulder pain, they're trying to recorrect you. This model came out of, I was doing some psoas trauma release.
Right, okay.
Because that's the part of the body that the vagus nerve interpretation doesn't go to. And I knew my psoas was absolutely blocked, and has been for donkey's years. So I was doing some release, and I was literally having what could be loosely termed as epileptic seizures. Oh, wow. But they weren't going to my brain because, as I said earlier, I had a vagal nerve stimulator, and I'd been using that for 2.5 years. So I think what had happened was the shaking had not taken its way to the brain. Now, whilst I was trying to think that through and thinking, that's interesting that I didn't have a full-blown seizure. My son got seizures at the age of 21 in his final year at university, and because he had no aura, and because he was travelling a long way, 40 miles each way to university, and we had to keep him safe. Obviously, we didn't want to stop his progress, but we had to keep him safe. The drugs were not good at that point in time, because you go through the nice guidelines until you find one that works, and it doesn't make a moribund in the first first semester, which is exactly what happened, and he lost a year of university. So, you know, we did ketogenic and all that, but that's another story. What I was doing with him was, in my psychology, I majored on human behaviour. It was my thing. So I was avidly watching him, because I was like this, because he was seizing all over the place. And the seizures are not that hard. The damage that they cause, because you're always trapped somewhere when you have one. So your glasses get smashed in your face, and you break bones and stuff like that. That I didn't want, you know. And so I was watching him, and what I observed was, when he had a seizure, he wouldn't have a seizure and then fall on the floor. He would just walk into the room, and then he would go down. He'd go down as if somebody had kicked him in the belly. Or if he was in the shower, he'd do this, because the shower's going on his back. So he's opening up the diaphragm, or he's closing the diaphragm. And then he would go blue, and then he'd faint, because when he's going down like this, the psoas was tight. Now, I knew his psoas was tight because when he got his diagnosis of autism, the naturopath I was working with said to me at the time, his psoas is really tight, and I didn't know anything about the psoas. I never did musculoskeletal. So, and it wasn't an interest of mine, because I wasn't in the gym all the time, you know, so it kind of just got left. I didn't know what it meant. I forgot about it. But then when this started to come through, I was looking at him, and he would go down, he'd go blue, he'd go down, and then he would be laid on the floor for about 20 seconds, and then the seizure would start. And I went, hang on, he's grounded on the floor. He's not usually grounded. He's a head person. You know, he's one of these university spoofs who's always in his head. IT, a bit like me, really. you know. And so I thought, he lives in his head, and when he goes to the floor, he's getting electrical discharge. That's what the seizure is. So then I said, well, actually, then that means that the seizure is not coming from the head. Yes, it's affecting the head, but this is the trauma point, and he's been triggered by a trauma, because there was always a stress response. There was always a stress thing that hit him.
Yeah.
You know, one of us might shout something, or, you know, and it wouldn't be anything major.
Yeah.
Just what you do as families, you know, to keep your kids safe.
Yeah.
And then he would go down. And I thought, shine on. That's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that means you can cure that as well.
Well, you know, you talk about like the fascia and releasing the trauma. There's a group on Instagram called the Human Garage. They do a lot of posting.
They do
a lot of fascia posting. But you know, just to kind of put it in simpler terms, you know, when you go to you kind of like you stress out, and then someone suggests like a spa day, right? Yeah. And you get a massage. And like, you know, when you're like, I don't know about you personally, but when someone like massages the legs and gets tension out, because you don't realize when you're stressed, you tense your muscles like this. Yeah. And when you release that tension, that's fascia. That's literally releasing the trauma.
Absolutely.
And then you feel relaxed after it. Well, of course you do, because you're so tight constantly. And then when you kind of go to see that sports therapist or the massage therapist, they're releasing the tension, and they'll make it scientific. Oh, we're releasing lactic acid, we're opening up the muscles, and like, but what you're essentially doing is you're saying, right, I know you've had, and I can say this, you've had a shit week, you've had a shit couple of months, you've had things are going crap, and we're just going to release that tension, and you suddenly feel relaxed and better for it. Yeah. You go home, you sleep, you have a great night's sleep, you feel good, and then next thing you know, you rebuild up. And this is the issue, is like everyone's got to the point where they think, if I do A, B, C, D, F, G, I'm going to be completely better. But no, it doesn't work like that. It's a continuous journey. Yeah. If you go to the gym and you're trying to build muscle, for example, or lose weight, you can't just go to the gym for a year, see the difference and go, okay, I can stop now, I'm completely healthy. I know we love watching that on, like, you know, Hollywood movies where like your old Ryan Gosling and Ryan Reynolds are standing there with their muscles and stuff, but they've had to train really, really hard and continue to train for it. And you see them when they stop training, you can see that their body shapes changes and stuff. And that's the thing with fascia and trauma release, is it's something now even the scientific community are talking about. Like, you look at people like Wim Hof breathing. Wim Hof became worldwide known for the Iceman, but even people like Dr. Huberman, who's like a neurologist on YouTube, he's talked a lot about like breathing and to release trauma. And it's not, they don't use the word trauma because trauma's a bit like, oh, you know, you shouldn't talk about trauma, but they talk about like releasing tension and resetting the parasympathetic nervous system. Those words are exactly from the exact same family chain. Yeah.
David uses the word energy.
You say the word energy, but it's all physically linked. You look at, you can follow any of the big podcasters and YouTubers, and you listen to their talk about energy and about mindset and everything. They all play a major role, but the issue is like when you talk about trauma, I think one of the scary bits is. I think we talked at the start was about people, people started off where they wouldn't talk about their problems and they just moved on. They were seen but didn't feel heard. And now society's moved towards feeling heard but not seen, which is creating its own version of trauma.
And I think with that, certainly what I see in my clients is if you start to go in with the word trauma, the ego. And again, we're not talking egotistical, but we all have an ego and we need it to keep us safe. And that's what it does, basically. Yeah. But sometimes it tries to keep us over safe. The ego understands the word fear, and our primal instinct is fear, isn't it? And it comes right back from since we first came onto the planet. And we have to have that mechanism of fear because we used to get eaten by animals, you know. We still have that mechanism. That's not changed. That's our fight or flight response. Yeah. And so immediately there's this thing with people because the trauma is in the fascia and in the muscle memory, people the ego is afraid to allow that person to go into that trauma because they're afraid if they know they've got trauma, they will be afraid of bringing that up again because they don't want to feel how they felt the first time round if they remember it. That's a big problem. And that's because the understanding is not there that actually if you do this kind of work or you do the massage and it's coming up, you just have to be somatic with it. So, just connect with it, do your breathing, and it goes as quick as it came in most cases. Sometimes you need a bit of help, sometimes you need someone to talk to, psychotherapy, something like that. But on the whole, it's fear that stops us going there, and it's fear that stops us talking about trauma. And sometimes I think, is trauma a really big word? And, it gets overused as well, doesn't it?
Well, like we said earlier, we were like, if you, at the start, I talked about, he like empowering you to heal you. Yeah. And the thing is, we said that earlier, if you're going to see a clinician, and I'll be honest with you, if you're going to do any sort of thing, go see a nutritional therapist, because they'll be able to support. Like, even with people going to low histamine diet, I've always said, go speak to an NT, because they'll be able to work out, if you're taking this out of your system, what do we need to add in to make sure you're getting the nutrients that you need. I think I can put a piece out today where they said, like, people, there's so little nutrition now that people are getting now. A simple multivitamin would provide nutrition for people, and that's why they feel great on multivitamins. Yeah. And sorry, I just kind of sidetracked of what I was trying to say, but it kind of drives me a bit crazy, because if you're going to a therapist and you see a therapist who will support you, the question is, how long do you see that therapist for? Because if you're seeing that therapist for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you've got to ask them, am I getting better, or am I just becoming more sensitive to trauma? And that's just my opinion with it. And that's scary, because now, like society, we said you feel you have an avenue to talk. You can go on social media. You've got TikToks, and people feel like they're heard, but they're not seen, if you know what I mean, for who they are. Yeah. Everyone's got this new drive to be like, look at me, like I'm this person and stuff. But the issue is, like, when you start doing that, you're actually creating another level of trauma, and you're actually traumatizing other people, because you're saying, look at me, I'm such and such. But we want to be the hero in everyone's story, not just the hero in our own story.
Absolutely.
And you're your own hero. And I say to people, like, you are your own hero. Like, you're a hero to yourself. Yeah. And people who need to know that will know that you're a hero. And so, like, it brings me back to this, because I was looking at this picture here of, like, the liver and looking at the kidneys, and you talked about how everything goes into the hips and the tension and the stress. Yeah. So, like, that's incredible with the solar plexus. And, like, I think you need to explain. I think we need to get you to explain the solar plexus and the impact it has on the rest of the organs.
Okay. So the solar plexus is the area just underneath the diaphragm here. Which
we feel all of our pain.
Where we feel all the pain.
Butterflies when we first meet that person. We're like,
yeah, you got feeling. Absolutely, yeah. So, when we've got a trauma, and sometimes, like in my case, didn't realise that was a trauma that would affect me for the rest of my life until I spoke to David and looked at Hannah's work. But I then realised that, you have patterns of behaviour that you run throughout your life from that trauma period. And so
patterns, that word.
Yeah.
That word, patterns.
Yeah. And until you see them, and this is why working with David's been fundamental, to see your own patterns of when you behave like a 3-year-old, and we all do that as well. Not that most of us would want to hear that. But anyway, we get triggered, someone's acting out their mother wound, and it comes to us and it's projected as, because we all do that. It comes in at the solar plexus. The first place it goes is the gut and then the heart. Now, Nutrienergetic Systems, Ness Health, they talk about the heart as an imprinter as opposed to the Western medicine view, which is as a circulatory tool to take blood around the body. So, so yes, it's taking all the nutrients through the bloodstream to the rest of the body. If you've got energy blocks, you're not getting the nutrients to the rest of the body, because there'll be areas where your body is stuck, basically, and the circulation's not getting through, which is what Gil Headley talks about a lot. So it's going to go there. The emotion goes to the heart, and then when you look at Chinese, Tibetan, Ayurvedic medicine, they're very focused on emotions, trap energy in the body. So if we've got anger or frustration, it's all in the liver. if we've got love or fear, it's all heart. And look what
Yeah.
we've got. You know, we've got a society that doesn't know how to love themselves, doesn't know how to love each other, fears death more than anything. And we've just come through a pandemic. And that's a trauma in itself. And this is why all this has surfaced, really, because thankfully I've had time to look at what's happening to my clients, because they're all coming back mad as hatters without being disrespectful to them.
Really?
Yeah, because mine's all kind of autism spectrum, pyroluria, those, you know.
Yeah. They're
So
trapped in it.
They're just trapped in their own stories, bless their hearts.
Oh, but we didn't talk about that, did we?
No.
When people were suffering, who were suffering through it, and they got trapped in their homes,
Yeah.
we didn't talk about that. The people that were who needed those appointments, needed to go to them, they became hypochondriacs even more. They didn't they? They became hypochondriacs even worse, because they were, and I think you said that they were fearing death. And that's crazy, because like I think I personally, I don't fear death. I think death is something that it welcomes us all, and when it welcomes you with open arms, if you
We come back anyway.
yeah, they look at the spiritual side of things. People speak, you know, they look at it, like they talk about it in most religions and stuff as well. But that fear of death really
It's huge.
it scared a lot of people. I was scared when they started talking about COVID. I was just like, what the heck is going on here?
Do you know, when you've actually had near-death experiences, you realise that actually it's not about whether we're infinite or not. It's about the fear of that process, isn't it? Because we assume it's going to be really painful, because, you know, we're
scared of pain.
Yeah, we're scared of pain, we're scared of whatever. But the actual process, I can tell you, because I've been nurse midwife for, or what do we call it, soul midwife, because I was on the edge of life and death in the ITU. I've seen loads of people pass over, and as I said, I've been there 4 times in the last 2. I know very clearly what happened. And actually, when you are at that stage where you're actually ready to give in and go, it's actually really blissful.
It's
like,
peaceful. People talk about it.
It's just take me. I'm not bothered now.
Really?
I'm done. Really done. And that's exactly how I was twice.
Yeah.
You know, and then something would, you know, trigger me and bring me back. But you know, and Anita Mojani talks about this massively.
Yeah.
You know, just listen to her. Her story is brilliant. I love people who do that. And now we've got doctors writing books about this kind of thing who are intensive care specialists.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not that it's alien. It's just we fear it because either we don't believe it because we've not had the experience, or we think it's a bit woo-woo because, let's face it, it has been woo-woo up to now. It's only now that since the COVID thing, I think the pandemic's actually opened up quite a lot of this kind of discussion as well.
I think it has, and it's made us become a lot more kind of like aware of like psychology and the impact psychology has on the brain, and that kind of like spirituality side of it. And I think the word spirituality kind of like people think it's wishy-washy, but it's not, because spirituality can be defined in so many different ways, and kind of like bringing it to the trauma side of things. Like you look at people who are like traumatic and the way that they hold on to weight, for example, and we know, what does fat do? Like muscles don't store toxins.
Fat stores it.
Fat stores it. Fat stores toxins.
Absolutely.
And so if you don't have enough fat, you can't store the toxin, so you become toxic in that individual in that way. Like look at people who are like really, really skinny, and then they don't store onto toxins. If they don't look after their health, you can see their skin going a little bit like a tinge of
They
yellow.
get old before the time, don't
They get old before the time, and so like you need a bit of fat to help to store toxins. But the thing is, realistically, you need fat for other things, not just for storing toxins. So this is why you need to detox as well, because if you don't remove that toxicity, that's the foundation. Forget everything else. That's the foundation, because if you empty everything out and you refill it correctly, you can then work on it. And things like looking at the shock and trauma, this cycle, I want to call it a diagram. But you've linked every single aspect together, which is looking at the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the solar plexus, the fascia, the muscles. It's so interlinked. But if you treat one of them, you start to realize you can treat every single other part of it. Because
I think we can heal really quickly.
of course we can.
I've always had the view
Yeah.
that the body can heal if it's got the right tools.
100%.
That's always been my thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that is through multiple layers of nutritional supplements. I think, some of us need a baseline because we're not getting it. I don't think it's the answer to a good diet. But I think if you do this work, I get people better in the solar plexus area with gut problems. I get people better quicker by giving them this plan to do than I ever did by giving them loads of antifungals, probiotics, etc. I will give them what I think they need, what their case is showing them, but I try to keep the supplements minimal. And the empowering thing for me is doing the clinical somatics work because it's cheap. It's all online, so they do it in their own time. There's lots there with the particular program that I choose, but it's a self-nurturing thing, and they don't realise they are nurturing themselves. But what Hannah has done is taken Feldenkrais's work. Do you know Feldenkrais?
No, I've never heard of him.
Oh, right. So he's a guy who, when we talk about exercise, we talk about stretching muscles, don't we? And that premise, I think, comes from times when we were really physical and we were using 4,000 calories a day to lift and tug and dig and all those kind of things that we're not doing anymore. Now we're more contracted. Feldenkrais, I think he was here far before his time, bless him. He was another out of the box. And Hannah sadly died before he got his work out there. But what they're saying is that when we are seriously contracted, what we need to do is contract more, tiny bit more, so that you can feel the contraction, because you won't feel it at the stage where you sat like this all day. You'll feel the pain here, but you won't feel it here.
Makes me want to sit up straight now.
Makes me want to sit up as well. So that it's contracted really like that, and then it's taken off really slowly. And as it's taken off, you can feel the muscles juddering. And that determines how much communication you've got between the muscle and the nervous system. And over time, because Hannah's work is all built around the core and the hips with some neck work. And I think the key is addressing this at the core, because this is your power center. This is, when you look at your chakras, for example, this is not your power over others, but your core power, isn't it?
I mean, you talk about the chakra side of things. I know it sounds good because a lot of people, when they hear the word chakras, they go into like, oh, it's a mystic and that side of things. But now, like, look at you follow the works of Satguru, for example. He's become really well known for talking about it, and you've even got people on the Joe Rogan podcast now talking about how the spiritual energy kind of flows in through the individual.
And Deanna Minnick's brilliant with this. I did her food and spirit coach course. Fantastic.
Oh, because she heard her spectrum of the different foods and stuff. But she was doing that years ago.
Oh, she was,
And now I think people like Professor Tim Spector have picked up on that kind of work, and they've talked about having the the breadth of different foods and stuff as well. And that's so incredible.
But it just shows you. It is game changing, but it shows you that I say to people, I don't do wacky diets anymore. Because whilst there might be a case of 3 months of a ketogenic, 3 months of a high protein to actually get someone protein nourished or whatever, the biggest band of research we've always had is that the more diverse your foods, the more different colours you've got in your diet, the more diverse your microbiome.
Well,
so
100%.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
Well, Tracy talked about we were talking a lot about toxins and toxicity and how it affects our systems. And I think we should get onto this part of the conversation about toxicity now, because we're exposed to so many different toxins. And the more, look, I was talking about vegan food, for example, now. Vegan food has changed the game for everything, right? But what people don't understand is that a lot of it's been processed. It's still processed food. If you start to go to the basics of ingredients, for example, and go, this is a basic ingredient I'm going to have, the problem is the basic ingredients of what our bodies have been nourished by. If call a broccoli, it's got, you know what nutrients it's got in it, you know what vitamins it's got in it, what benefits it's going to have. But then people are now going, well, I need to have protein, and because I'm going on a plant-based vegan diet, they'll go, right, I need to buy this processed food. Once in a blue moon, it's fine, treat yourself. I'm not saying don't treat yourself, but if you look at like the basics of like going to like tofu, tempeh, soy foods, because they've been lambasted as like too much is bad for you. But then in some cases, if you read it, it can be beneficial if you don't add other processed food into it.
Absolutely.
And like we were talking before about polyethyl glycols. I told you about this before. I said, like, you look at polyethyl glycols now. If you look at the research of polyethyl glycols, it says it has a toxicity level. There's a certain amount you can have a bit of it. But the issue is we now have it in so many different parts of like food to vape pens, and that you're breathing the passive smoke. It's on medications, it's the coating on supplements, it's literally in bloody everything at the moment. And what people don't realize is that it's not about that individual, it's about the contribution of all of that into it. And me and Tracy were talking about that, and we kind of said like, okay, we need to like move away from that level of like, you know, not I want to say toxicity, but just like we want to reduce our exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, because you can't get away from it, Anne. Let's be honest, you can't get away from it. And if you try and get away from it, you're gonna end up living in a flipping bubble, miserable as hell, and probably with even more trauma from it. So you can
look
move
at the people who've got multiple food intolerances because they're full of toxicity.
Oh,
and
overactive immune system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overactive immune system.
And they come in and I can't do this, and I can't eat sulfur foods, and I can't eat that, and I can't eat that.
Yeah.
And I'm going, that's just trauma. You know?
Yeah. But trauma caused by food, and the thing is, when you strip back to the basics, because people use that term like histamine intolerance, you've seen what I say. I'm like, listen, there's no such thing as histamine intolerance. It's not true. It's someone's created that term. It's bollocks. It's histamine overload.
Yeah.
And if you look at the root cause of a histamine overload, it's an overactive immune system, and it's things like this. Stress. Stress plays such a major role in histamine overload.
Absolutely.
Food that plays another role. Medications, and it all boils down to like causing a leaky gut and cause that inflammation because you're just doing this constantly.
Yeah.
But then if you look at the people who were like, and we said this before, didn't we? We said like people who like not have their like the stuff together, but the people who are like that have healed quite well. They do sit up a bit straighter, and they do like sit straighter. They have their stuff together. And I think that's really unnoticed by a lot of people because they think could be ego, but it's not ego. It's just having like, I want to say your shit in check. Yeah. It's like we can be straight. You know, we're friends. We can be straight to that. But it's having that in check.
Yeah.
And that's what. And from listening to you and talking to you, this is what this system does.
Absolutely.
Because you literally linked every single part of it and gone, right, we need to heal this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And as you start to see it, the person starts to stand up straighter. Yeah. Their dance comes back and they feel re-energized.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? But it's getting people to do it because we're still in that mindset of give me a pill, I want to be made better. And that's why I use the term, I can empower you, but only you can heal you.
Yes, Anne. It's true. You're healing yourself and you're making those small little changes. Like just waking up in the morning and having a glass of water before you drink your coffee. Like we've done it for years now. Wake up in the morning, you have a nice, slightly warm glass of water. Maybe I think Liz Earle did a thing on her Instagram where she said like sprinkle a bit of salt into it and you just drink it, rehydrate the system, put the electrolytes back in because as you sleep you sweat, regardless if it's cold or hot. Yeah. We've proven that, theory.
Well, that's a detox, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a detox in itself because when you sleep, your body detoxes, and then you just do these small little changes, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, I feel better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I feel really, really good.
Absolutely.
And like obviously we're not trying to. I'm not trying to hear going to go right. Everyone take Toxaprevent, but it's even just basic things like that. The foundation of reducing that toxicity, which pave so many results.
Absolutely. The thing is, though, when you think about it, we were talking about animals earlier as well, weren't we? You take your animal to the vet. If you're a sensible animal lover, you detox them every 3 months, don't you? Get rid of the fleas, you get rid of the parasites every 3 months.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. No, that's very true. but we have like is it the January, like drought January?
Dry January, yeah.
It's so like we even do it with alcohol. We would go, you need to have a dry January, and then it's like there's so many different. Oh God, and where's society come to where we started to have like months of sections off where we have to like do like dry January? But you know what? Each to their own, and if it helps people,
absolutely,
it helps people.
I mean, what you were saying about the plants earlier as well, you know, about the toxicity and going to the kind of processed vegan stuff. Instead of spending all the money on the processed vegan stuff, why not just get a Thermomix? Because you've got a tool for your kitchen. That means you're not spending money on your cooker. It's got 72,000 recipes in it. You can go vegan or whatever diet you want, and it's all there for you. You press a button, it tells you what to put in. You put it into your shopping list. It goes to your supermarket, and the guy delivers it. All you do is pay the money.
It's crazy.
And
it's basics. I think like we don't have time at the moment now. We want to simplify.
It takes away all the time.
Time, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The time when I was ill, both times, that latterly, I was at the stage where I was doing things like lentil pasta and a bit of broccoli and then a pesto sauce. And if it took any longer than that, it was like, And here's me spouting to the public, right?
Yeah.
And then my friend was selling Thermomix, and she just asked a couple of us to go along for a like you do, a demonstration.
I've never heard of Thermomix before.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Amazing. Best £1,100 I ever spent. And she said to me, come along. And when two of us went, and the same three met the next day, because we have this thing called campfire conversations where we pontificate the world.
Oh, I like that. Campfire conversations.
It's brilliant, once a month. So we turned up, and the lady who was also invited, she runs the group. She's a coach. So I just said to her, Marie, how do you feel today? And she said, funnily enough, I feel really great. And I said, so do I. I said, there was something about last night. You know Tracy Land, so it's Tracy who did the presentation for us, right?
Yeah.
Well, Tracy's full of love, She cooked us a 4-course meal with the Thermomix, and she guided us through, showing us it all. And I was hooked. It was like, I'm having one of those. And we just felt so amazing afterwards. And I think it was the combination of Tracy creating it, coming from where she comes from, as we all know, but also that particular item does so much that you don't even have to think about. It does your shopping for, etc. You don't waste food because it's getting used up. You might have to plan your recipes for the week. Well, you don't even have to do that, because you just look at, what do I want for this week, and put it in your diary, and then it's all computer. It's all AI.
That's
crazy. I mean, these are the beauties of AI, aren't they?
Yeah,
they drive your car and they drive your cooking. I can honestly say to you, it's been life-changing. Really has.
That's
because when you're on your own, you don't want to cook either. So I fully endorse how these people feel.
Yeah, because even that, like being alone, you'll go to what is quick and easy,
because you want to get on with something.
Yeah, because you just need to you want to like log off and just watch Netflix for the rest of the evening. Like, we've all been there. Even Dilly I go there all the time. I'm like, Tracy was last night, because she's just like, when I'm like in my shutdown zone, my like go-to is just to kind of like turn off everything, plug everything, and just watch mindless drool TV and like watch some fiction and just laugh about it. But it is such a good thing, and I think that is so important. And I want to just kind of like bring this to a conclusion and just say this, like, if we want to learn this and we want to go through this, when is this ready to go? Because I know you're going to run courses on this, aren't you, soon?
I'm hoping to. I've just spoken to Simon at ICAM.
Yeah.
And I'm just writing up a paper, hopefully for ICAM magazine.
Oh, wicked.
That I should think a couple of months, and then I'll just put the things together, because I am thinking of just putting it on my website as a course. Whether I run it as a one day or whether I do segments of it, I'm just looking at it now, and I'll keep in touch with you, Dilly, and I'll let you know when it's. I think it's needed.
Yeah,
it's really needed.
Because that if the thing is, as like clinicians want to build the links. They want to sound like, if you've got this, if you've got like a tension in the muscle, we need magnesium. if you've got this, like they want to build those links, those connections. And like the thing is, even, you know, all the work that I do is all about connecting histamine with the different health conditions. But I think what you've done is you've connected all the different systems from the brain to the gut. And as I say, the gut is the first brain and the brain is the second brain, is it? Because if you feed the gut well, you feed the brain really well. And so I think what you've done is you've linked up all the processes. And if we can, if you could teach everyone, I think
it'd be great.
It'll be game changing, because it's just, some people just don't want 101,000 supplements. They don't want the medication. They just want to do like the basic healing, because that mindset, when you change it and you come out of that, like, I'm a victim, everything's out to get me. When you change that, you start to change other aspects of your life. And I'm a big believer of that.
Absolutely. And as I said, when you're doing the clinical somatics work, it does help you to love yourself. Because you start to get in tune with your own body. We're all out of our bodies right now, and no one's in tune with it. And I think that's a key thing as well. You know, get in this body, stay in it, and, you know, love it back to health.
Yeah, crazy. And I have no words. I think this chat's going to be like, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with it. And I really appreciate you making the journey to come here. It's been absolutely incredible. And once this is live, I think we need to book you in again and just get you in and just talking about the course and going through it. And just, we want feedback. You know, if anyone's watching this, please just feedback, put us in the comments, let us know how this resonated with you. And, you know, if you end up doing the course, come back to this video and let us know what you think. And I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Dilly. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Cheers, thank you.